I'm Camille, and I live off-grid with my family in Mid-Coast, Maine, and I've now been off-grid for about 11 years. Raising my kiddos out here, doing the off-the-grid life thing, and kind of wild mothering, homeschooling, if you will. The term sort of changes all the time, but just really bringing some roots into the alternative living stuff. So this is a unique thing for a lot of people. This is a wood-fired cook stove, and in 2020, everybody kind of had completely different experiences that year. One thing that I felt personally motivated to do was like, how can I take my self-sustainability one more level? And at the time, I had been trying to figure out what to replace an old school propane hot water heater that seemed to not really be, it was no longer safe. I tried multiple different things for a solution to having running hot water off grid, and I was at kind of a stuck point, and I started looking into more wood fire things. This house actually already had this chimney here, this hookup here, and apparently there was a cook stove in this spot a really long time ago, but it was much bigger and it was almost too hot for the space and too hot for the house. So former owners actually sold that a long time ago. And then when I started to want to find an option that wasn't a propane stove, which used to be in the kitchen over here, I was looking into wood fire, and I just started doing some searches, and I ended up finding this cook stove on Craigslist for $250. And for people to be looking for a cook stove, that's pretty unheard of as far as having something that is a helpful, reasonable option. Most people are gonna pay at least like a minimum of $1,500 up through 15 grand for a proper, really good cook stove. I was really blessed that this is a bit smaller than a full house model like one of those might be, but it really works here because it's not too hot for the house. It's just perfect. I've always been a major fan of houseplants. I grew up in a house with over 100 houseplants in the house, and lots of them were passed down mother to mother. And now I have lots of the same exact plants that my grandmother was growing many, many years ago. I also feel like houses need to have functional spaces. And so in pretty much every room in the house, it's a functional room, but I also love making it feel good. And so you can come in here, you can hang out in the living room, but I'm also often in my apothecary, which is kind of attached to the living room because it's a functional part of the house. It's where I do my crafting and formulating and shop orders and that sort of thing. I make products in here. I often am growing the herbs or wild foraging the herbs that I use in almost everything that I make. I like how I get to have like a deeper connection with the plants and the medicine that way. And then I turn that into other things. And I turn that into things to sell in my shop, but I also love sharing that knowledge with people. And so I've been teaching online for people how to like kind of be your own, local medicine woman or your own at least family, care provider in that way and feeling more empowered that way. I really have found it's important to have a creative outlet. And I also feel like everyone I ever talk to about this agrees, no matter what, if you do live out in the middle of nowhere or if you live right in the middle of a city, you gotta have a creative outlet. And for me, that's been music for a really long time. A few things, I always have at least a pair of shears. Usually I have 2 sizes. This is like clippers for bigger stuff, and I usually have my little mini set in here too. I have this like pretty full-on knife that is clearly gets heavy use. It's a little more intense because this was a gift from a former Green Beret Special Forces friend who was like, oh, I can see you're into knives and things like that. And so it's a little more intense than one might find in a normal foraging belt, but I like it. It works really well. And then I've also used this for animal processing when I've needed to do that as well. And then I definitely don't always have the mini hatchet on here, but you'd be amazed, especially with like getting stuff done on the land. This is like, it takes the need of having like certain shears and pruning things. It's like you can get so much done with a pretty sharp little mini axe. And I also do so much with fire that it's very helpful, you know, to be able to take a small log and quickly splinter it up for your kindling and not have to like walk 3 minutes this way to get a tool to come back out and then come over here. It just is, it's just something that I've just been doing for a while. And then this one goes back and forth. It's like a little foraging pouch. I want to say the person who designed it, it might be more of like a shells pouch for going shooting, which is the first foraging pouch I used many years ago was that. It was like a shells pouch that you put on your waist, because then, you know, you don't have to worry about, you can be hands-free. But I personally have found if I'm holding a basket and I can only pick with one hand, then I can actually like do quite a bit more when I'm like do, you know, both hands, and it's hands-free. So sometimes I'll even wear a basket with a string around my neck and do, if I'm doing lots of things. But this I like to carry around with me just to be on the land, because sometimes I will come across a patch of St. John's where I didn't know about that was there, and I want to make sure I harvest the flowers because I'm seeing them in the moment. And so I'll just do like a little mini harvest and change it out when I get back to the house. So this property is 32 acres, give or take. It came already off the grid, so to speak, so there's no grid tie here. And so the power, the electricity comes from the solar panels, which is coming from the sun, and charges the batteries in the house, and that's how things run. There's no electrical grid tie, and there's no phone grid tie or internet grid tie or anything like that. And so this property was originally cleared by somebody who was a fruit tree grower. And so when I got to purchase the property, there were already a lot of unique medicinal trees and fruit trees and nut trees growing here because it was formerly a nursery. And there were things like, I mean, the original list of the fruit trees and the fact that there was a greenhouse attached to the house definitely drew me in. I mean, the list was long. It was like mulberries, peaches, apples, pears, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. You know, the list was pretty long. There were walnut and chestnut trees, and that was just kind of on the surface. And then when I started living on the property and getting to know the plants myself, I've really gotten to kind of educate myself. I'm a self-learner. I was raised homeschooled and unschooled, so I am always just like trying to learn things on my own, and have always been that way. But since being on this property, I've been able to learn different trees, learn different medicinal plants, learn different herbs, learn that like we're not just in a lawn, but there's medicinal plants growing all around us, and that, you know, a lot of people are out there spraying their lawns because it's not just purely grass, and there's like this absolutely wonderful medicine like a dandelion or something like that that's a common lawn plant that people, you know, will be spraying to get rid of, literally. And that the earth responds to our needs too. So they say in herbal medicine that it takes 3 seasons for plants to start showing up that the people need that are living in that space and living on that land. And I've now seen that with my own eyes, being somewhere season after season, where I can say, hey, that's interesting. This is a brand new plant I haven't seen in my many years here, And it's clearly, it's appearing, it's responding to our needs. It's responding to somebody's need in this dynamic or in the family. And so I, over the years, have tried to just continue to add to the food forest, continue to add to the medicinal plants that are already growing here. And a lot of people will come from the standpoint of like wanting super manicured gardens, wanting super manicured beds of plants growing and beautiful manicured looking fruit trees and all of this. And I'm just a little too wild for that. I like when things look really nice and tidy, but I'm not somebody that's gonna be out there pulling up, for an example. I'd have to go to a piece of earth and to plant the herbs I wanna grow, the plants that I think I should be growing. I'm gonna have to then pull up anywhere between 3 to 20 other medicinal plants just to bare the soil to then plant my medicinal plants right there where I've just pulled a bunch of beautiful wild food, wild edible, wild medicinal plants up out of the ground. And instead, I like to kind of look around, what's being offered here? Once upon a time, we were just with the land. We were not separated out from nature. And I think that that's what brings so much disconnect to so many people, is that we're taught in society that we're separate from nature, that nature is a park that you pay a pass to go into, and that's how you experience nature on the weekends after you worked in a cubicle all week. Instead of being like, hey, I can actually exist and be in nature every day. I still have to work. I worked from about 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. this morning on the computer, and I'll probably do multiple other sections throughout my day as well. In Maine, a lot of people are absolutely petrified of ticks, and I understand why, I really do. I've had my own personal, struggles and family member struggles. I totally get why, but I don't think that's a really good excuse for missing out on what's happening. This is what somebody might call tall grass or a field or overgrown, whereas someone else might come in here and say like, oh, this looks like so overgrown. Why are you letting your lawn get like that? And that sort of thing. I'll literally get down in here and check out all the things that are growing. And just in this spot, see if I can find a berry. We've got wild strawberry growing right here under these tall grasses. We've obviously got lots and lots of daisies. The red clover, an amazing medicinal herb. People will buy red clover from Mountain Rose Herbs and then mow their lawn that has red clover all over the place, right? It's a really helpful herb that brings natural occurring phytoestrogens and can actually help people that have too much not naturally occurring estrogens like xenoestrogens or mycoestrogens in the body, and it can help restore a natural estrogen cycle. It also is a really gentle heavy metal detoxifier. This is a perfect creation. This is my first electroculture experiment, and this mulberry tree looked like it wasn't going to make it just about a month ago. And the kids and I have been making electroculture, where you take copper wire and you wrap it around a piece of wood or a stick, and it just needs to be in a spiral motion. So only about 1 month ago, we put this electroculture wand in here, and this tree has now doubled. It has leafed out like you would not believe. I mean, it was this low just a month ago. And not only is it branching out, having so many more leaves, but also now has ripe mulberries coming in. They're tiny because it's a baby fruit tree, but there's actual food now growing on this tree that just about a month ago looked like it wasn't going to make it. This is one of my latest favorite experiments. So we are coming into this giant field where this whole section right here are all blackberries. This whole area just pops off like insanely with berries. And then behind it, right here, oh, I do see ripe ones. In this direction is a raspberry forest. And at the moment, these are just plants that were planted so many years ago that they do very well being their own plants out here. And I do prune them every so often, but not nearly as much as some people might at a fruit tree farm or something like that. This is like fruit I grow for my family, for preserving a bit for the winter months, but also because we just love eating seasonally, and so we eat lots and lots of berries during the summertime. What we do is we just come down and visit every day, otherwise the birds get them a lot. Pretty soon here, this is gonna be exploding with really fat, this is like store-bought level raspberry. Property is taxed for tree growth here, and so every so often you have to do something that involves forestry or something along those lines, selling, you know, forested products from your land. And so last year we had a forester and logger come out who's a really good friend. He's been a master deer hunter and Maine guide for like over 40 years or something along those lines. And he is someone that he came to do the logging, and it was like a very contrasting experience with any other logger person I've ever interacted with, because he's such a forest guy. And so Samantha designed all of these trails that are like my dreams come true, to have walking trails all throughout the property. And so for him to do the forestry stuff and the logging, instead of just like logging the back half, or the back, you know, people call it the back 40, instead of just logging the back part of your property and doing a strip cut, they made trails all throughout the forest and all around, to literally like, it goes all the way around circularly if you want, and you can just walk for hours now without having to go on the road. It's amazing. It's so fun to see in a child, in a kid, especially when you've raised this kid, how rewarding and excited they get about, I just made this bow out of only things I found on the land, or a fish hook out of a wild piece of rock, you know? And so the level of excitement and satisfaction to see in a child's kind of enthusiasm, energy, is just so beyond fun. I can't even speak on it enough, where when you get to like help encourage what your children are naturally wanting to learn more about, and that's what I'm always about, that's why I like, quote, unschooling, although it's not my favorite term. I prefer child-led learning, or different variations of that, where instead of pushing your children into different passions or directions or schooling things, you're really just saying, hey, what are you excited about? What interests you? What do you want to learn about? Okay, and then how do I support that more? Maybe that does look like having the skills to read up on something, so then potentially more homeschooling is required to help them meet their goals. This grape on this side is way overgrown. Like, I really should have figured out how to cut this grape back last winter, but I did not, and so she's still super overgrown. And now I was coming over to the path, and I love how this is happening, coming to like meet the kiwi, which are both really viney climbing plants. This is a cool plant. If you've ever heard of northern hardy kiwi, it produces small green kiwi berries that are essentially about this big, about like a large grape or a cherry, but they're kiwi inside and out. And so it doesn't have a fuzzy skin, it has a smooth green skin, and you can eat the entire thing. You don't have to peel it or anything. But if you open it, it's like late August, early September that it gets ripe. If you open it, it looks like a tiny kiwi on the inside. It's adorable. And it tastes just like a kiwi. It's amazing. So this is a giant kiwi kind of like town right here. And kiwis are one of those plants where you need a male and a female to be producing. And so the female fruits on this side and has flowered but not started fruiting over here. Oh yeah, wait, there's some fruit. Little tiny ones, they'll get much bigger, but there are some under here. And again, this is just like growing more food because why not? This is a very easy plant to grow. In fact, you just kind of have to like prune and keep it healthy and like make sure it doesn't overtake other things. But it comes back every year. So many people want to grow their own food, and immediately we go to the gardening mindset. And so many people are out there stripping what's in their naturally occurring lawn or where they want to put their garden and planting things that only come back for that 1 year. I mean, a lot of people are planting more perennials and that's becoming more popular, but most people are just focused on growing food for that season and then buying their seeds again from a faraway place or from maybe local, but then going back and every year an annual cycle. I really love establishing something that then comes back on its own every single year. And whether you are helping to maintain that plant, like the kiwi definitely requires pruning, certain fruit trees require pruning and living with the plants that way, but still that plant grows bigger and more every year. It fruits, it brings you food every single year as soon as it comes into season. And that's something that then can supplement your garden, or maybe your garden can supplement it. Just a thought. Peony, and usually I have quite the peony garden, but the rains have made it really difficult to have a successful peony garden this year. This garden that we're in right now is a mix, and there's lots of flowers that have been planted over the year that then have like kind of moved themselves around. This is a black currant fruit right here, so it's a berry, and it's a very unique flavor. And so a dried currant is just essentially like a raisin of this right here. This is just a black currant. And behind it, we've got tons and tons of baby grapes happening. One is kind of taking over a high bush cranberry at the moment, which is also the plant cramp bark. And so a lot of people make medicinal products and tinctures or supplements out of cramp bark because it is known to be an antispasmodic and soothe cramping for both muscular cramping and that sort of thing, but also women with PMS and you know, childbirth cramping or postpartum cramping, that sort of thing. So it's in a lot of formulations. Here's a small example of different, it looks like, I have a friend that calls this chaos gardening, where you just like throw your seeds out into the garden and just like hope for the best. This was actually not planted that way, but this was a combination of people originally putting things here and then the wild herbs just showing up. And so just in our tiny little section right here, we've got St. John's wort coming in, which these flowers will open soon, and then they're yellow, but they actually, when you break them, here, I'll just do like a little bit right here, they actually are red when you crush them. So St. John's wort is such a fun plant. I love working with it. When you make an oil from it, it's like a deep red color and is not a yellow flower at all. And those will be open soon. Right next to it, there's multiple things right in this little mix. This is wild marjoram right here. That'll have some purple flowers in about a couple of weeks. They're just barely starting right here. In the oregano family, really, really close relative of oregano, and has a lot of sort of antifungal properties like oregano does. This right here is wild bergamot, wild bee balm. A lot of people grow the cultivated bee balm that has like a rich purpley, kind of maroon purple flower. These have a light lavender flower and are also a great antifungal, kind of antiviral properties in that. And then it just keeps going. I've got lupins growing. There's goldenrod all around me. Another wonderful medicinal plant. And so it just like is a mix. We've got Sweet William just like down here underneath growing. That is it's not a technical, like medicinal, but it is an edible flower, and I always love putting edible flowers on meals because it just makes it more beautiful, enticing, and fun to eat, and it smells really good too. This is St. John's wort. This is how much I love these plants. This is what the St. John's wort flower will look like soon. This is the stem. These have just been really helpful plants for me. This is a wild rose, Rosa rugosa. Coming out and like tilling up, stripping all the plants away and planting a garden, and then calling something like milkweed a weed when it's actually a food, and it's a wild food, and it's a really good source of calories because you can eat the milkweed shoots when they're really small and they're just starting to come up in the spring, and you can also eat the like little florets, like a broccoli floret. And so what I like to do is before it's flowering, I'll take these and cook those up. And if you're, depending on what you're doing, I don't find like a need to blanch them. I can just cook them straight. I've never had any issues with that. Again, everybody, wild edible wise, has different opinions about that. So you might find that some people are more opinionated with how to perfectly process your wild food. Thank you for coming to check out my homestead with me and getting to play on the land. Hope to hear from you sometime in the future. If you want to check out more, my website is CamilleRoseApothecary.com, and you'll find my products and my courses on there. And if I do live events in that season, you'll find that on there as well. So thanks for stopping by.